Deputy Sherlock, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Éireann Corla, and I thank the Minister who is responsible for this particular issue. I thank him for coming before the House here today. I want to raise the issue of the defunding of the infant perinatal healthcare centre in UCC in Cork. This is Science Foundation Ireland Research Centre. It is a female-led research centre, a research centre that is led by female principal investigators. It's the only one of its kind in the country, and it is one that deals specifically with ensuring better health outcomes for pregnant mothers and for children, for babies in utero and born. And lately, a decision was made by Science Foundation Ireland to defund, and I won't put any other words on it because no matter what way it's parsed out here, the decision was made to defund this centre. It's a vital centre, it's the only one of its kind in the country, and it subscribed to an external process whereby its activities, if you will, were reviewed by an international panel of experts. And that panel of experts was chaired by none other than Professor Gordon Smith, who is chair and head of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Cambridge University, who, in their deliberations, when they were examining the work and the output of the centre, clearly stated that the centre should continue to be funded by Science Foundation Ireland. And we have, which is now in the public domain, a subsequent decision by Science Foundation Ireland where they have instigated their own process, if you will, which to my mind is an anonymous, secretive process, where they have said that notwithstanding the rigorous process that has been gone through already by this research centre through an external review, that SFI has decided through a second opaque process, a secretive process, that centre should now be defunded. I raise this issue today because I think there are serious question marks over the Science Foundation Ireland process. I believe that it is not transparent. I believe that the taxpayers of Ireland are not sufficiently in view of, and I'm certainly not in view of, the process by which this decision was made. And where there are millions of euros of taxpayers' money at stake, what we need to hear from the Minister is why was this second process designed? Who is in charge of this second process? Is the Director General himself overseeing the second oversight panel? Because it rankles with me that two governors, or two members of the Board of Governors, two eminently qualified people in the names of Dr. Ruth Barrington and Professor Doug Kell, who were on the Board of Governors of Infant, have resigned lately because of their statements to the effect of saying that the SFI second process of review was neither, and I quote from Ruth Barrington, Dr. Barrington, an eminent person who was a former chief executive of the Health Research Board, who states that the SFI process, and I quote, was neither objective nor fair. So in essence, Éireann Corla, I am hopeful that the Minister and his officials will have clear oversight of the process, and I'm hoping that the Minister will come to us today giving us some hope that he will pour light on the SFI and the approach of the Director General in respect of this issue.
Thank you, Éireann Corla, and I want to thank the Deputy for raising this issue. I know he's a former Minister for Research and Development and Innovation, and he has an interest in it. And I myself did visit that very fine centre. Firstly, can I say that Science Foundation Ireland Research Centre's funding for Infant Centre will cease in May. First of all, I welcome the indication from UCC that Infant Centre will continue its research work and will do so having built up, if you like, a diverse range of national and international funding agencies, industry partners and, of course, philanthropic donors. As for the background to this case, since 2013, Science Foundation Ireland has been building, as we know, a network of SFI centres that deliver excellent research with economic and societal impact in areas of strategic importance. Do you want me to wait, Deputy? No. Okay. To Ireland, areas include pharma, big data, medical research, nanomaterials, telecommunications, smart manufacturing and so on. In the case of infant, clinical and health research and innovation in pregnancy, birth and early childhood. Science Foundation's Ireland commitment of 429 million to these research centres is complemented by an industry commitment of 230 million. The research centres are an embodiment of Science Foundation Ireland's transformation effect on the national research system. They represent a major funding awards linking scientists and engineers and partnerships across about 19 research bodies, including all 7 universities and 328 companies across Ireland. Science Foundation Ireland currently supports 17 such research centres, and they are approved for funding following a rigorous international peer review process. Once established, each centre is subject to a rigorous on-site review involving international experts every 2 years. Furthermore, all research centres understood at all times that there was not to be an automatic guarantee of additional funding for a new 6-year term at the end of the 6-year, if you like, award term. As part of the 4-year strategy review, centres were invited to submit a proposal for a second 6-year term of research funding. The quality and overall competitiveness of these new funding proposals from a scientific and impact perspective was evaluated by the same international experts assessing the centre's progress today. In addition, an international oversight panel was involved, whose role was to provide quality assurance to the review process. In the case of infant, the independent international oversight panel recommended that it should not receive immediate funding. That was the assessment. The independent international oversight panel instead recommended that infant should proceed to a separate competition, I can tell you, to be reviewed against other potential centre applicants in 2020. SFI has followed the recommendations, which means SFI's funding for the time being will end in May 2019. The decision, therefore, is the product of a rigorous procedure of evaluation undertaken by a panel of international experts. Through this process, SFI can be assured of an impartial and independent procedure based on established best international practice. As SFI has run such an international review process in line with best practice, I, as Minister, cannot, as indicated, intervene in the process. Maybe I'll come back later on. There's 2 issues that the Deputy spoke about, and I'll come back on it.
2 minutes, Deputy.
The key line in the Minister's response is, in the case of infant, the independent international oversight panel recommended that it should not receive immediate funding. So let us be clear here, and I know that the Minister is not wishing to deliberately misinform the House. I know that notes are prepared for the Minister. I've been where the Minister is now. But let us be clear, there are 2 processes here. One is the international peer review, which is the external process. That was chaired by Professor Gordon Smith, one of the most preeminent professors of obstetrics and gynecology in the world. He stated, and I quote, that infant should be enthusiastic. He enthusiastically recommended refunding without further review. Okay? The Minister refers to an international oversight panel. That is SFI's own international oversight panel, a second and separate process, which is secretive, anonymous, which none of the researchers or principal investigators involved in infant had any dealings with. In other words, Alas Ceann Comhairle and Minister, there is something opaque about this process. It lacks transparency, and it is for the Minister, I would argue, to examine that process on behalf of the taxpayer, because I fear that this process was deliberately gamed in a way to take out a research centre, which is one of the smallest of the 7 to hand, which was led by female researchers, women researchers, and dealing with women and children. They tried to take out the lowest hanging fruit, Alas Ceann Comhairle, and they thought they'd have the path of least resistance. There is an issue of transparency here, and that is why Dr. Ruth Barrington and Dr. Kell stood down, because they questioned that very SFI process. I implored upon the Minister to please take a look at this. I am being genuine in terms of the interventions that I make here. UCC did not appeal the process, which is extremely disappointing. They did not back their own female researchers. And why is that? So there are serious questions to hand.
Minister Halligan.
Thanks. There's 2 issues that I wanted to take up in my first response, and that is there transparency in the decision on infant funding? First of all, Science Foundation Ireland has provided detailed written feedback from the international review process to the Infant Centre and UCC as a lead partner. In addition, SFI met with the Centre and UCC leadership to provide a feedback in July. And this information pertaining to the review of the new research proposal is confidential to Infant. I am not privy to that. Given the strategic importance of research and high level of industry collaboration involved. Furthermore, you asked if one review panel recommended refunding for infant and another did not. Why? This is really not the case. The review consisted firstly of a detailed written review by the international experts on the progress the individual SFI research centres had made and, if you like, the proposals for future research outlined in the applications. Secondly, the international reviews conducted an on-site review. This is what I'm told, an on-site review, and subsequently wrote a report with recommendation and scores. And following the above, the final review process then consisted of an international oversight panel whose job was, number 1, to provide a quality assurance for the review process, and 2, to review the normalising scores of the different international panel reviews of the various research centres. And this is important, as an on-site panel reviewing the research centres, if you like, was comprised of different reviewers. So the oversight panel was then charged with ensuring conformity and consistency across all reports and making the final funding recommendations to the SFI Executive Board. Can I say that, you know, when I was informed of this, I had visited the centre. I think it's an excellent centre. I was disappointed. It is interesting that UCC has not, as you say, made a comment on this. But is there transparency in the decision on the infant funding? I've said, to my knowledge, there is. If one review panel recommended funding and the other did not, I gave the example as to that is why, as the case is.
We move